What is going on, guys? Jack here and welcome to this Football Manager 2016 video, and today we're going to continue on with our series of looking at player upgrades and downgrades for this year's Football Manager by looking at some possible downgrades for Football Manager 2016. So if you enjoy this video, smash the like button. If you want to see more of these kind of videos, check out the description. There'll be a link to the playlist with all my upgrade and downgrade videos in. Hopefully you enjoy. Smash the like button if you do, and without further ado, let's get into the reviews. So for the first player in this downgrades video, I had to go with the one that everyone is thinking of. I'm thinking of it, you're thinking of it. If you're not thinking of it, you probably didn't play FM15, because this guy just grabbed goals for fun, and that is, of course, as you can see on screen, Mario Balotelli. The man who, let's be honest, he's a bit of a controversial figure. As a Liverpool fan, I wasn't massively keen on the fact we signed him. When I saw how good he was in Football Manager, it made me feel a little bit better, because I thought at least if he's going to be terrible, as it transpired he was last season, at least he'd be playing for Liverpool and be semi-decent. But let's be honest, in FM15, he was just too good. He was always a good goal scorer in the Premier League, consistently kind of got top goal scorer in whatever leagues he ended up playing in. For Liverpool, he often, in my saves that I saw, and kind of played through, he'd kind of end up being a club legend. He'd be there for decades, scoring goals for fun. Frankly, it's just a little bit ridiculous. You can see, looking at his CA, 155, his potential ability was 170, and last season for Liverpool he got 1 goal in the Premier League in 16 appearances, 6 of which were on off the bench. He didn't get any assists either. He played for 940 minutes, and 1 goal simply isn't good enough. Now, I do empathise a bit with the AC Milan researcher on this rating, because to be fair to Mario, the season before last he did get 14 goals and 6 assists in about 30 appearances for AC Milan, which isn't actually that bad at all. In fact, that's a pretty impressive set of stats, but the bottom line is he simply didn't do it for Liverpool, and as a result I expect to see him get a pretty hefty downgrade. The next player we're going to look at is another player who came from Serie A, and another player like Mario Balotelli who's returned to that division after just 1 season, and that is Juan Cuadrado, who of course joined from Fiorentina for Chelsea in January for, I think it was over £20 million. This player in FM, good player, a very good player, 163 CA, 170 PA. He came to, I guess, Chelsea with a bit of a hype around him, you know. For Fiorentina, he'd been doing pretty darn decently, but for Chelsea, well, let's put it this way, it was a season to forget, to say the very least. He played 4 games, made 8 appearances on off the bench as well, and in that time he failed to get a goal or an assist. He played 1 game at Chelsea this year, before, of course, moving back to Juventus. I say back to Juventus, back to Serie A, where he's now going to be playing for Juventus. And despite the fact this player only really had half a season to shine in the Premier League, he simply didn't get an opportunity to. Whether that's because he just wasn't good enough when he got there or not, it's hard to tell. In the games he did play, though, he simply didn't shine, and so I think it can be pretty much expected that we will see a downgrade of some kind to his current ability and perhaps even his potential ability. The next player on this list is one that, again, like Balotelli, is not going to be a surprise. It is, of course, Falcao. This guy, I believe, is the highest rated player. Actually, no, he's the second highest rated player in this episode in FM15 as of the January update. And this guy, of course, played for Manchester United last year. He was on loan from Monaco. Look at his attributes in game. He looks like a goal machine. He looks like the kind of player who should be scoring for fun, and in FM15 he certainly did that when he was on loan at United. Frequently I'd seen them sign him permanently at the end of his loan because he'd do so well. In reality, however, he had a lot of chances, and fair enough to Falcao, he's had his fair share of injuries in recent years, but he simply did not meet expectations. For Manchester United, he made 14 appearances and 12 appearances off the bench, and in those kind of, I think it was over 1,000 minutes he had on the pitch, he got 4 goals and 4 assists, which, granted, slightly better than Mario Balotelli, but certainly not up to scratch. And there were certainly games for Manchester United where he had chances to score and he should have been taking them, and he didn't. I actually expect to see Falcao get a fairly hefty downgrade. Of course, he is this year on loan at Chelsea, where he's kind of acting as a kind of second/third choice striker, really. I kind of feel like Remy's been picked ahead of him a few times already this year. He's come on off the bench 6 times for Chelsea. Bottom line is a current ability, I believe, of 170, which is what it is in FM15, is just ludicrously high, especially for a player who's been, for the last few seasons, certainly not at his best. Granted, his injuries have kind of played a big role in that, but to be honest. I could see him being downgraded to maybe 155 CA, maybe even a little bit lower. Let me know, what would you do to Falcao changes-wise? Would you just up his injury proneness and maybe lower his natural fitness? Or do you think stuff like 19 finishing is simply too high? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts. Anyway guys, the next player is the only defender in this episode, and he's one who actually wasn't that highly suggested by you guys, the viewers, but certainly when I was thinking of players that need downgrades, he's a name that immediately sprung to mind, and that is Younes Kaboul, now of Sunderland, formerly of Tottenham, a player who has, in a lot of FMs recently, been very, very highly rated, really, since, I think, FM 11, he's been a very good centre-back, and I think he's overdue a downgrade. Granted, he has had a kind of slow decline in his current ability in recent football managers, but for a player who, well, so far this season has been anything but impressive for Sunderland, I just think his CA of 142 is too high. Defenders, generally speaking, like their CAs aren't as high as outfield players. I guess that's because there's less attributes required for a defensive role. But looking at his performances in recent years for Spurs, last season he played 11 games for them. Wasn't particularly impressive. The year before that made 11 appearances. The year before that, just the one. He had injuries there. The bottom line is this is a player, Kaboul, who at one point certainly was for a season or two a key player for Spurs, but in recent years he's been phased out. He's getting a little bit older. He's of course taken a pretty big step back in his career in going to Sunderland, and unfortunately for him I think he's overdue a downgrade to his current ability. Anyway guys, last but certainly not least, we have Robin van Persie, another player who I think deserves a downgrade. A few strikers this episode. Let me know some other players you think who need downgrades who aren't strikers. They don't have to be in the Premier League, of course. This happens to be the league that I'm, of course, pretty well versed in, being someone from England. But Van Persie, I think people would agree that he deserves a downgrade. He's actually better than Falcao in game, which I think to an extent is fair enough. And in recent years, whilst he's not been terrible for United, I mean, last year he got 10 goals in 27 games, I just don't think his attributes in FM reflect perhaps how good he's been in recent years. He's a player that, he had that one season at United where he got 26 goals, and I believe they won the league that year. That was the first season after he moved from Arsenal. But since then, he's never really been the kind of go-to man, the first man on the team sheet. Certainly not what you'd consider a super key player for Manchester United. And I kind of feel like in FM, he's a player like Falcao who simply, his attributes are just too good. Consistently, he'll be getting 20 plus goals a season, particularly towards the beginning of FM 15 before the January update. Himself, Falcao and Rooney would grab goals for fun between them. And it wasn't too uncommon to see United run away with the league in the first few seasons. Of course, he's got a move to Fenerbahce this year. He's actually done fairly well there so far. I think he's got 3 goals already, which is not a bad return, really. But there's a big difference between doing it in the Premier League and doing it in Turkey. The player is now, of course, 31 too. And as a result, I do think Van Persie deserves a downgrade in terms of his ability in Football Manager. Anyway guys, that wraps up today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Let me know what you made of the players featured in this downgrades episode. Let me know what players should be upgraded and downgraded for FM 16 based off their FM 15 attributes. Leave them down in the comments. I read them. Some of them will get featured in the next episode, I'm sure. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button. It lets me know that you're enjoying the content I'm putting out at the moment. Of course, if this is the first video you're watching here on my channel, subscribe. And other than that guys, it is me, Jack, and I'll talk to you guys in a bit. I'm out.